Ladies and gentlemen, I'm back to continue with the discussion on tax dispute resolution mechanism. In our last session, we studied the stages of tax dispute resolution process. We studied the lodging of ADR application and procedures. We also examined the independent review of objections. We outlined number four, the parties to an objection. Then lastly, we discussed how the IRO works. In our today's session, our attention is on the tax dispute resolution process. We are going to illustrate the tax dispute resolution process cycle. We have one objective in our today's session. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to illustrate the tax dispute resolution process cycle. And if you've been keen candidates, you will recall that the tax disputes arises after an assessment on a taxpayer. So the beginning point is an assessment. So you'll have that box, an assessment on a taxpayer. Assessment on a taxpayer. When the tax administrator makes an assessment on a taxpayer, the taxpayer may dispute the assessment, and the taxpayer is expected to make a notice to submit a notice of objection to the tax administrator within a period of 30 days. 30 days. So within 30 days, within a period of 30 days upon the receipt of the assessment, the taxpayer, if he disputes the assessment, then is required to make a notice of objection and submit it in writing to the tax administrator or the commissioner. Objection by the taxpayer. Objection by the taxpayer within a period of 30 days. Objection by the taxpayer. The taxpayer should within a period of 30 days notify the tax administrator in writing. Okay. The next stage in this process is what we discussed in our last lesson: independent review. Independent review by the independent review of the objection by a committee of experts or the technical officers of KRA. Independent review. So at this point, we have independent review of the objection by two categories of people here. Number one is the technical officers, the technical officers, all right, of the TDR, or technical experts. And you recall in our last lesson, we say that these experts are independent of the expert or the officers who generated the assessment that ended up into an objection. They ended up being disputed by the taxpayer. So this is an independent review of the objection. When the taxpayer raises an objection to an assessment, that objection is reviewed by independent parties within KRA, either the technical officers or the technical experts, a panel of technical experts or a committee. This is a committee or a panel of technical experts. Now, this independent review should end up into what we call an objection decision. They are expected to make a decision. They are expected to do what? To make a decision. It's called an let me put it right there. The independent review is expected to come up with an objection decision. An objection decision. Now, candidates, the objection decision, as we learned earlier, should be communicated to the taxpayer within a period of 60 days. Within a period of 60 days. And it's supposed to be 60 days if it is a matter concerning income tax, VAT, or excise duty. A matter concerning income tax, VAT, or excise duty. But if it is a matter concerning customs and border control, then the objection decision has to be communicated within a period of 30 days. 30 days if it is a matter concerning customs and border control. Customs and border control. If it's a matter to do with if the objection is raised on the basis of if the assessment is in relation to customs and border control, then the objection decision should be communicated within 30 days to the taxpayer. If it is a matter relating to income tax, VAT, or excise duty, then the timeline is 60 days. And we learned earlier that if the commissioner does not communicate within 60 days, then the objection that is raised by the taxpayer is allowed. And we mentioned 4 scenarios. The first one is that this objection decision that is communicated could be that the tax administrator either allows the objection by the taxpayer or partly allows it or disallows it. There are 3 scenarios. If KRA does not allow it, or does not allow it in part, or does not disallow it, then within 60 days, in case of income tax, VAT, or excise duty, or within 30 days in case of customs and border control, then the objection by the taxpayer is automatically allowed. Automatically allowed. Now, upon receiving the objection decision from the commissioner, then the taxpayer has 2 options. Either to appeal against the objection decision, or the matter may be subjected to mediation process, an alternative dispute resolution framework. If peradventure the taxpayer decides to or rejects or is dissatisfied by the objection decision, then is expected to give a notice of intention to appeal within 30 days. Then is expected to file the appeal within 14 days. Within 14 days. So I'm going to have another box here. Did you get it, candidates? Hey, let me take it again. Upon receipt of the objection decision from either the technical officers or the committee of experts, the taxpayer may be dissatisfied with the objection decision. If that is the case, then he is expected or required to give a notice of intention to appeal. Give a notice of intention to appeal. Notice of intention to appeal within 30 days. Okay, within 30 days. Then he should lodge or file an appeal within 14 days. File appeal within 14 days. File the appeal within 14 days. File the appeal within 14 days. And that candidate should only relate to an objection in relation to income tax, VAT, and excise duty. But if it's a matter concerning customs and border control, then that's a different matter, which candidates, the taxpayer will be required to appeal within 45 days. Appeal within 45 days. Should appeal within 45 days. Should appeal within 45 days. That is customs and border control. Customs and border control. So I hope you following the discussion, candidates. All right. So if it's a matter relating to income tax, VAT, excise duty, then notice of intention should be to appeal within 30 days. Then they file up the appeal within 14 days. If it is a matter of customs and border control, the appeal should be made within 45 days. Within 45 days. Then candidates, we have the tribunal at this point. Tribunal. Now, candidates, the tax and appeals tribunal, because the appeals are to be made to the tax and appeals tribunal. Tax and appeals tribunal. Tax appeals tribunal. Appeals tribunal. The appeals are made to the tax appeals tribunal. So that is the case where the taxpayer is dissatisfied with an objection decision made by the independent review. So he can choose to appeal against the objection decision. Alternatively, the taxpayer may take the mediation process route. The alternative dispute resolution. Alternative dispute resolution. Mediation. We may also call it the mediation process. Mediation process. May take the mediation process. Mediation route. Mediation. This is the mediation process. The mediation process. And under this mediation process, we studied the parties. The parties. We have the taxpayer. The taxpayer is the aggrieved party. There is the technical officers or the commissioner, technical officers of the Kenya Revenue Authority and a facilitator. So the objection decision may be subjected to a mediation process. So the mediation process will give rise to the ADR concession. Will give rise to the ADR concession. ADR concession. ADR concession will give rise to ADR concession. Now, candidates, concession is the act of doing something in order to reach an agreement. Is the act of doing something in order to do what? To reach an agreement. In order to reach an agreement. So, the two parties will have to sit down under a facilitator to find a resolution, because this is a dispute between the taxpayer and the administrator. So the two will have to come together and try and resolve the matter under the guidance of a facilitator. So there can only be two options here. The two may reach an agreement, what we call ADR agreement. The two may reach an agreement, ADR, alternative dispute resolution agreement. We learn more about this agreement in our subsequent sessions. We will have many sessions, around 4 subtopics in relation to the alternative dispute resolution, beginning with the legal framework, ending with the ADR agreement. All right? If the concession, if these two agree, if the concession here leads to an agreement, then that's it. But the parties may not agree at the mediation process. They may not agree at the mediation process. What happens? The decision, as we learned earlier, the decision that is made at the mediation process is binding to the commissioner or the tax administrator, but not the taxpayer. The taxpayer is not bound by the decision that is made at the mediation process. So the taxpayer still has room for appeal. The taxpayer may choose to appeal the decision to the tax appeals and tribunal. Okay, this is where now there is no agreement. Then the taxpayer can seek redress, the tax appeal or tribunal, tax appeals tribunal. All right, is that clear, learners? That is the tax dispute resolution process. It is as simple as that. If you followed our last discussion, then this is it. This is the process, the tax dispute resolution process cycle. The cycle begins at on the assessment by a tax assessment, when the administrator makes an assessment on a taxpayer, who within 30 days is expected to raise an objection in writing. All right, raise an objection in writing within 30 days. Then that objection has to be reviewed. In our last lesson, we saw what should happen. We saw what is supposed to be happen. It has to be reviewed by independent technical officers or a committee of experts. And this committee should come up with a decision, which we are calling objection decision, within 60 days if the matter is in relation to income tax, VAT or excise duty, and within 30 days if the matter is in relation to customs and border control. The objection decision that is made here, the taxpayer may still not be satisfied by the objection decision after the independent review of the objection. And if it is an income tax, VAT or excise duty matter, then notice of intention to appeal within 30 days has to be made. Then the taxpayer is expected to file appeal within 14 days. Within 14 days. If it's a matter to do with customs and border control, then the taxpayer should appeal within 45 days. All right, should make appeal to the tax appeals tribunal. Another alternative is to go the mediation way. Alternative dispute resolution. We learned how application is to be made in our last lesson. We saw the procedure on applying for the alternative dispute resolution under the KRA framework. We saw that the parties are the taxpayer, the technical officers, and the facilitator. So this approach, the mediation approach, can result into two alternatives. Number one, the ADR concession. If the two agree, then they will have an ADR agreement, which you said is binding to the commissioner, but not the taxpayer. The decision, if the taxpayer decision is made by at the ADR level, that decision is only binding to the taxpayer, to the facilitator. I mean to the commissioner, and not the taxpayer. That means that the taxpayer can still seek recourse with the tax appeals tribunal. So candidates, that is the cycle. It is as simple as that. The tax dispute resolution process cycle. And that marks the end of our today's learning session. I'll give you one assignment. Illustrate the tax dispute resolution process cycle. Illustrate the tax dispute resolution process cycle. That is your today's assignment. Thank you for your time. I'll meet you in our next session, where we will start on the ADR resolution. We will study the legal framework and objectives of alternative dispute resolution. Thank you. God bless you. Bye-bye.